So today I wanted to do a follow-up video to the videos that I did yesterday, calling out the opposition leader and the People's National Party for politicizing this recovery effort in Jamaica. And in my personal opinion, I believe that the opposition leader, Mark Golding, need to apologize to the people of Jamaica for politicizing this recovery effort and from creating a political distraction from the search and rescue and the recovery effort going on in Jamaica. I believe that as Jamaicans in the diaspora, there are millions of Jamaicans in the diaspora, friends of Jamaicans, that are out there mobilizing, doing fundraising, asking co-workers to contribute to packing barrels, to putting funds together so that our beautiful island of Jamaica can recover at lightning speed, while the opposition leaders in Jamaica embarrassing us and politicizing this natural disaster. So in this video, I'm going to use facts, not emotion, and I'm going to show you that this recovery that we're seeing unfolding in Jamaica now is not only the biggest recovery and the fastest recovery in the history of Jamaica, but the biggest and the fastest recovery in the Caribbean history. And when I'm talking about in the history of the Caribbean, I'm also comparing this to the recovery of the earthquake in Haiti that took place in Haiti over 15 years ago. And while the world is mobilizing to help Jamaica to recover, the opposition leader, Mark Golding, is in Jamaica politicizing this natural disaster and creating a distraction from the recovery effort. So, let's talk about it. So what is interesting about this, day 5 after the hurricane made landfall in Jamaica, the opposition leader thought that it was a good idea to call a press conference. And in the press conference, even the opposition leader and some of the members pretty much was telling on themselves, because they use words like catastrophic. They were using words like the communities like Westmoreland and South St. James and other communities was marooned from the rest of Jamaica. It was like impossible. Like those are some of the words that they were using in the press conference, while at the same time criticizing the government for not getting to those communities that were completely cut off from the rest of Jamaica. And in the press conference, they were criticizing the government of Jamaica. Mark Golding, opposition leader, in the press conference stated that he was in constant contact with the Prime Minister. Mark Golding also tried to get a JDF helicopter to go and to do a tour in Westmoreland, and was told that there was no JDF helicopter available to do that tour because they were rescuing people. And the JDF only have a few helicopters, so they weren't able to give Mark Golding one to fly over Westmoreland. And what I don't understand is why the opposition leader felt the need to fly over Westmoreland when the Prime Minister went the day before. The Prime Minister and the disaster assessment team went in the same area the day before. But one day later, the opposition leader is flying in a small helicopter there, going with his two empty hands. If he cared so much about the people, why not send the helicopter with food instead of going in the same area where the Prime Minister went before? And day 6 is when the Americans started working. And I'm going to show you some images of the American delivering food in those areas. What is said to be over 40,000 care packages to those areas in that day. So this is the video of the Americans coming to work and giving assistance to the Jamaican Defense Force.
Up in the choke. Bravo Zula. Up in the choke today. No, the video now. I next time, Mister. I next time, Mister.
And to prove to you more why I believe that Mark Golin and the People's National Party, they were in the middle of trying to politicize this whole tragedy right in the midst of search and recovery. As I said, when they are still searching for bodies on the ground, the opposition leader is out there trying to politicize this whole thing. So Dayton Campbell went to his constituency and he's walking around and calling it a disaster zone. And people are using words like an atomic bomb. It seems like an atomic bomb dropped in that area. That is how devastating it was. And at the same time, Dayton Campbell in his community with cameras and everything, looking in the camera, saying that this area should be declared a disaster zone.
We need, in my opinion, this constituency needs to be a disaster area and all the emergency services need to come into the constituency. It has to do with care for the people who are currently suffering. We've been able to establish the White House Community Center.
And yes, Dayton Campbell is right. That area should be declared a disaster zone. But the interesting thing is that Dayton Campbell already know that the Prime Minister already declared it a disaster zone. So what was the purpose of taking camera, going in the community and looking in the camera saying that your area, that area should be a disaster zone and all of the relief efforts should be in that area when the Prime Minister already said that to the nation?
We have issued an order under the Disaster Risk Management Act declaring the entire island of Jamaica a threatened area. This provides us with the legal framework to take all necessary measures to safeguard lives and property during the hurricane. All our national agencies, ODPEM, the JDF, the JCF, the NWA, and our first responders are on high alert. Shelters have been prepared, supplies pre-positioned, and emergency teams are standing by across the island. At the time of impact, the government will declare a disaster under the DRMA, along with the various other measures necessary from time to time to take us safely through the periods of disaster, relief, and recovery.
So before I continue, I would just like to make an appeal to my Jamaican brothers and sisters, and for those who are friends of Jamaicans and you live in Canada. So as I said, this Hurricane Melissa, was historic. The most devastating hurricane to have ever hit Jamaica. And also this recovery that we're seeing in Jamaica taking place right in front of our eyes. This is also historic. We have never seen so much support from the international community for a natural disaster in Jamaica. The last time I count, I was up to about 110 countries that already committed to help Jamaica in the rebuilding, the recovering and rebuilding stage. The last time I also checked, there was about 165 flights that came into Jamaica already with relief supplies, and that is 165 within the 5 days that the airports were reopened. So this is a massive effort. One of the fear that I see like Shaggy and Sean Paul and others out there talking about is the fear that, look, this Hurricane Melissa, was trending across the world. Everybody across the world were talking about Jamaica and Hurricane Melissa hitting Jamaica and the devastation that the hurricane would cause. The amount of impression on the internet about Jamaica and Hurricane Melissa is in the millions. The fear is, after everyone stopped talking about Jamaica, after CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, all of those news networks pack up and leave Jamaica, that people will forget Jamaica and will stop helping with the recovery. So what I'm suggesting to my Jamaican brothers and sisters that live in Canada, today I was on the phone with Food for the Poor Canada. Food for the Poor is the most credible, let me repeat, the most credible non-profit out there in Jamaica. Food for the Poor. It's been in existence for over 30 years. It has helped so many Jamaicans, as a young man growing up, I used to have a good friend that when we were young got one of those food for the poor houses back in Jamaica. And that young man now is an engineer and is making millions of dollars in Jamaica because of that food for the house, food for the poor house that helped to put roof over his head. So Food for the Poor has been doing an amazing job for decades. And myself and my family, we are going to be committing to at least 1 year of monthly donation to Food for the Poor. And for Jamaicans who live in Canada would understand what I'm talking about. When you donate in Canada, the government, you'll get back a tax receipt that you can use as write-off at the end of the year. So if you are a Jamaican and you said, you know what, I want to support Jamaica for the long term, I don't just want to support for the first month, the second month, and then stop, this is the best way to do it. Because this way, doing it this way, you'll be able to give more. Because if you were thinking of giving $1,000 for the year, when you do it this way, you could give at least 2,000 or 1,500, because most of what you give, the government will use it. You can use it as a tax write-off, and then you will end up getting back a check from the government. Or for those Jamaicans living in Canada and normally you have to pay back the government every year, doing it this way, you would avoid paying back the government when tax return time comes. So that is an amazing way to contribute to be in Canada and to stay with Jamaica for the long haul. After the media is gone, after the frenzy is gone, after everybody stop putting it on their timeline, on their Instagram feed or whatever, this is a good way to keep supporting Jamaica for the long haul, because Hurricane Gilbert, it took us a long time, 5 years or more to recover. So I'm sure that people in Westmoreland, people in Black River, people in St. Elizabeth, people in all those devastating areas in Jamaica, it is going to take a long time for them to recover. And if we want to support Jamaica, this is a good way to do it. So as I said, Food for the Poor Canada, I'm going to leave the website link here. You can just go click donate. And what you can also do in the section where you can write a note, make sure to write that this is for the hurricane relief in Jamaica, because you can write whatever you want it to go to, but this would go for the hurricane relief. Make sure to write that. And also the Jamaican Canadian Association, from a conversation that I had today, I hear that they are packing non-perishable items. They are packing a lot of stuff to go to Jamaica, to send to Jamaica. So if you also want to contribute in that way, you can do that. And I'm going to leave the number for the Jamaican Canadian Association so you can contribute and we can help to keep Jamaica alive, to support Jamaica for the long run. Because as I said, we want Jamaica, we want this thing to continue, not just for this year, but way into next year when all the camera is gone and everybody forgot about Jamaica. We in the diaspora want to support Jamaica and to make it possible for Jamaica to rebuild in less than 5 years. So let's continue. So there have been people reaching out to me and saying that, look, for the opposition leader to be expressing their concern as the opposition, that is not politicizing this whole devastation that's happening in Jamaica. And I say to that, look, as I keep saying, the opposition leader said on numerous occasions that he have access to the Prime Minister. He's called the Prime Minister several times. So this is not something, to me, the press conference was a big distraction. While Nikisha Burchell was in her constituency trying to find food for her people, she was called away from her constituency to come to a press conference. And that, to me, that is not good. It is not a good look. And that is why I believe that this is politicizing it. And to call Hurricane Melissa catastrophic, to use some of the words that the opposition leader used, the Prime Minister used, the meteorologist, everyone that was covering the hurricane in Jamaica. Like I saw one weather person was saying that the entire island should evacuate. That is how serious he thought it was going to be. And for us to use those words, it's like an atomic bomb dropping in those areas that's been devastating. And for us to use those words and then turn around after 5 days and criticize the government for the relief effort, to me, that is politicizing this whole thing, because I challenge anyone to show me the only two hurricanes we can compare to what happened with Hurricane Melissa would have to be Hurricane Gilbert and Hurricane Ivan. And I challenge anyone to say to me that Hurricane Gilbert, that we recovered faster in Hurricane Gilbert than we are recovering now with Hurricane Melissa. I also challenge any Jamaican to tell me that Hurricane Ivan was a faster recovery. And that is not the case. The recovery effort that we're seeing in Jamaica now in 2025 is the fastest recovery effort we have ever seen in the history of Jamaica for something this magnitude. And I challenge anyone to say that is not the case. This effort that we are seeing, this is a much faster effort than we saw in Gilbert. This is a much faster effort than we saw in Ivan. Jamaica in 2025 is in a better position dealing with this hurricane than we dealt with Hurricane Gilbert and Hurricane Ivan. Because in Hurricane Gilbert, we did not have like MPs getting millions of dollars, each MP getting millions of dollars to service their constituency. In Hurricane Gilbert, I remember the only saving grace in those times was the churches, where non-profit organizations from all over the world would come to, like some of the Catholic Church, some of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and they would give out supplies. There wasn't any money at the time for government to give their MP 1 million, 2 million, 15 million. That was not the case. So to criticize this effort when this is the fastest we have ever seen any government move, to me, that is disingenuous, and that is why I believe that they are politicizing this. And it's one thing they're criticizing, it's one thing for citizens to criticize, but the opposition leader should not be criticizing this, because the opposition leader knows better. Some of the journalists should not be criticizing this, because they know better. They have all the information. They know everything that is happening in real time, and they know the history. Some of them lived through Gilbert. Some of them lived through Ivan, and they know that this recovery effort is much more organized than Gilbert, is much more organized than Ivan. And then to criticize and not to give kudos to the government. Hurricane Katrina was not as strong as Hurricane Melissa, and over 1,800 people lost their life in Hurricane Katrina. When I saw Desmond McKenzie for about 2 to 3 days urging people to come out of low-lying areas, I saw some of the same school bus that people were arguing against, the JUTC bus, going into areas and pulling out people, when the Prime Minister decided to make it mandatory evacuation, that no one will stay in their place, in their house. Just imagine that the government did not do that. We could easily see the same death toll that we saw in Hurricane Katrina, because Hurricane Katrina was not as strong as this hurricane. Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans. New Orleans is not a coastal line. We're talking about Black River. We're talking about Westmoreland. We're talking about some low-lying areas, and those areas completely wiped out. Just imagine if there was not a mandatory evacuation. So we criticize the recovery, but the things that the politicians did to prevent the high death toll in Jamaica, nobody is saying anything about that. And that is the problem that I'm having with this. And the Prime Minister of Jamaica, the Most Honorable Dr. Andrew Holness, did call him out when he was in Parliament. And to me, as I said, I believe that this is a disgrace, because the Prime Minister should not be in Parliament calling out the opposition for this type of politicizing a natural disaster 5 days after the disaster hit Jamaica. That is just despicable.
There is a sense, Madam Speaker, that I've heard being bandied about, that some members of Parliament were not integrated into the operations, or that there was some kind of favoritism where some constituencies got and others didn't get. Madam Speaker, let me stand here and say that there was never any intention or action on this government designed to marginalize, discriminate, isolate, alienate any member of parliament. And we must dismiss out of hand any argument that would seek to divide this country politically when it comes to the distribution of aid. As far as I'm concerned, every Jamaican is entitled to the aid that comes in and to the spending of the government. There will be no politicization of aid. It never happened in COVID, it never happened in Beryl, and it will not happen. Madam Speaker, I can point out to you that the member from Eastern Westmoreland made his public comments. I saw them. I reached out to the leader of the opposition. I recognized your pain in what you said. I saw your public comments. I recognized the pain in what you said, and I asked the member from Southeast Clarendon, the Minister of Labour and Social Security, to reach out to you. It is only a matter of logistics why I was not able to land in Darliston or in White House. My friend, if the helicopters could have landed me there, I would have landed there, and I would have been by your side if I could find you. There was no attempt whatsoever. And the suffering of Jamaicans in your constituency, the suffering of Jamaicans in the constituency of Northwest St. Elizabeth is of concern. There are constituencies over here that we have not reached. Southern Trelawney, we haven't reached. Northwestern St. Elizabeth, we haven't reached. So all I'm saying, Madam Speaker, and to Jamaica, I must stand up firmly and close the door on any attempt to politicize aid in Jamaica.
So as I said, if you are going to criticize this effort, name one natural disaster in the history of Jamaica comparable to Hurricane Melissa that the country recovered faster than it's recovering now. In the comment section, we can talk it out in the comment section. And if you can go ahead and name that one disaster that recovered faster than we're recovering now, maybe I'll just come and apologize to you and say, yes, you had all right to criticize the government in the way they dealt with this situation. So guys, sound off in the comment section. Let me know your thoughts about this. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. And remember, peace. I'm out.